70% of CEOs believe a recession will upend anticipated growth over the next 3 years, 3 quarters. That's 75% of them also believe a recession will make post-pandemic recovery harder. And this will impact company earnings by up to about 10% over the next 12 months. According to KPMG 2022 CEO outlook, in spite of short-term recession fears, the increased confidence CEOs have for the longer term indicates they feel they are well prepared to navigate through businesses and the turbulence that might come. However, KPMG 2022 CEO outlook stated that while CEOs may be resilient and optimistic, there are still concerns about macro and microeconomic challenges which may inhibit achieving sustained growth. The country's economy was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic that started in 2019, resulting in a 1.92% contraction with projections of a slow recovery. Inconsistent, brash and/or misplaced policies, market forces, environmental, social and corporate governance matters are all said to be a threat to these expected growth. So joining me this morning on the conversation is Yemi Kale from Lagos, Nigeria, as partner and chief economist, KPMG Nigeria. Thank you so much, Yemi, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So the International Monetary Fund said that Nigeria's economy will grow in 2023 by 3.2% and drop to about 3.0% by 2024. And your firm, KPMG's report, also predicted some sort of struggle, but then modest growth coming along the way. So I'd like to find out from you, what are the factors that could fuel a possible recession and slow the growth of Nigeria's economy?
Well, I think growth forecasts are very much in line with the same forecast of the IMF. We are initially predicted a 3.0% growth for the year, but we adjusted it to 2.9% following the first quarter GDP numbers, which went down below our estimates. So we're not particularly surprised by that adjustment as far as the IMF is concerned. Yes, we see 2023 to be a continuation of the challenges that Nigeria has had since the 2019 COVID pandemic. We expect, even though those challenges are easing and even though things seem to be getting better, it's still challenging. The growth is still going to be fragile. It's still going to be slow growth, not enough, not as much as is needed to allow Nigeria to hit its potential. And even though the current administration is taking several steps to fix this problem, we don't expect immediate impact in 2023, and I think it's probably going to take till late 2024, early 2025 before we start seeing the positive effects. So yes, 2023 and most part of 2024, we expect would remain challenging across all the major aspects of the economy.
All right, so how does this actually, in terms of the prediction now, how does it compare to previous years or maybe decades? What are the factors you would say has led to this path of reduced earnings? Because we know that the Nigerian economy, amongst economies of the world, have experienced shocks over the decades. So we want to find out what are those factors that are actually leading to these reduced earnings and figures that we're seeing in the Nigerian economy.
Okay, I think by earnings, you mean the value of GDP. Well, we've gone from a period where we were growing in the past, in 2020 to 2015, when we were growing between 6 and 7%. And even then, the growth was decent, but was not good enough to drive us to where we wanted to go. And in the last 8 years, that 6 to 7% growth had reduced to about 1.1%. I think the consequences, if that was your question, I think you have to remember that in those 8 years we had 2 recessions. One that was global, and the second one that was global, that was as a result of the 2019 COVID pandemic, and then moved into the Russia-Ukraine, the effects which continued to the Russia-Ukraine war. And the first one in 2015, which was, in my opinion, more self-inflicted. Likely as a result of our unforced errors, which is basically taking the wrong economic growth strategies, policies, as well as what I term the dysfunctional structure of the Nigerian economy that we operate in, where over 62% of the Nigerian economy is directly and indirectly dependent on oil. So when the oil prices started going down in that year, of course, affects the majority of Nigeria's economy. So I think those are what I would say are the factors, the major factors that were responsible for Nigeria moving from a period when it was growing 6-7% to a period in the last 8 years when it grew by 1%. And we're just beginning to come out of that going forward. And the challenge is to ensure that we move back to that period when we are growing 6-7% and even stronger.
All right, you've talked about the pandemic, you've talked about recession, we've had global price volatility, that is a petrol price now, or crude oil price, as the case may be. We've also had other challenging issues that has affected economy globally. But then looking at all these challenges, why does it seem now that the CEOs are unfazed? Are they well prepared to weather any economic storm, unlike what happened in 2019 when they were actually caught unaware by the pandemic?
I think there are two major issues. One, it's obvious, Nigeria's economic potential is very established. CEOs, whether domestic or international, always look at Nigeria as a huge market. We have lots of natural and physical resources. We have very large arable land. So I think most people understand that if Nigeria gets its policy and its act right, it's a huge market and it will be almost unstoppable. All the ingredients for success exist in this economy. We have a very vibrant, young, educated, intelligent, hardworking population as well. We are located very strategically. So everything is really in place to ensure that Nigeria meets to that huge potential that it has. So I think CEOs understand that, and all it is they keep looking at Nigeria to see if we are getting our act together, if we are getting our policies and our plans right. And I think they understand that once we do that, our potential is going to be huge. So I think that's the first thing. I think secondly, what they have observed of late with the new administration is that it seems to be taking policies that they themselves believe the government should have taken, though they themselves believe the government should have taken for many years. So if they are seeing the government taking those right steps that they also agree with, doing the things that they had said should be done for many, many years, and they see them happening now, then it inspires confidence because they realize that the tough decisions that have to be made have been made. The policies, strategies that need to be introduced have been introduced. And since they understand that those are one of the major inhibiting factors that have kept Nigeria from attaining its potential, it's been eradicated, then of course they'll be a lot more optimistic for the future. Now, it's not based on the current growth trajectory. It's based on what they see as government policies that could unlock Nigeria's potential for strong growth. So I think that's probably what is inspiring that confidence in the Nigerian economy going forward.
Yeah, so now talking about government policies, would you say that they would contribute positively to the economic outlook of the Nigerian economy probably in the next few years? Because in some quarters, it has been argued that these government interventions have been unfavorable and harsh. And you will see that we have inflation going up to about 22.79%. We have the cost of living also rising. The price of PMS has gone up. Taxes are being amended and being spread across. So are you also saying, or are you implying that these government policies are unfavorable and harsh because you said they are tough? And do you think that whether or not they are these tough, it will still bring about a positive outlook or contribute meaningfully to the Nigerian economy?
I think you need to look at policies and their effects across the time in question. There's a short term, there's the medium term, and the long term. And some policies might be positive or negative in the short term, but the reverse might be the case in the medium to long term. And I think that the reasons why I believe that many of these policies that the government has taken are needed, whether they would and the right policies to take, whether they would achieve the objective remains to be seen, but definitely it's the step in the right direction. And yes, there's going to be short-term pains. The idea is that we're hoping that in the medium to longer term, those short-term pains will ease, but then those short-term pains are needed to take us to where we need to go. The challenge with Nigeria is that we left so many things undone for so long. And like anything, if you keep it undone, it builds up. And when you try to fix it, it's gonna hurt. You're getting used to businesses, consumers, individuals are getting used to operating in efficiency. So when you're now and you've set your system, your structures to work within that inefficiency. So when you're now trying to restore your economy to a more efficient way of operating, so that you have more sustained economic growth and development, it's going to hurt in the first. It's going to hurt in the short term for a while. I think that's what most businesses and consumers are complaining about. But if the government keeps faith with reforms, fingers crossed, I believe that over the longer term, Nigeria as a country is better for it.
All right, now talking about growth, Nigeria's rich natural resources and huge consumer market are potential drivers of economic growth in the country, and you would agree with me with that. Now, what specific industries do CEOs believe will drive Nigeria's economic growth in the most probably short and, of course, long term?
I think Nigeria's potential definitely in agriculture. I think there's potential which is hugely untapped in solid minerals. I think Nigeria has a huge potential also in manufacturing, likely because of the huge market that it has. Of course, arts, entertainment, recreation. These are all sectors that I believe have huge potentials for Nigeria. Nigeria is already demonstrating that huge potential, arts, entertainment, for example. But like I said, things like solid minerals, we're not exploiting, simply with agriculture, we're not exploiting anywhere close to what our potential is. So there's huge opportunity for growth. And many of these sectors also feed into manufacturing because they provide the raw materials required. So I think those are, if you ask me, I think those sectors are the key, are key sectors that Nigeria can grow really strongly from. In that regard, I don't really think that government needs to do anything. Government just needs to stay out of the way of the private sector. The job of government is to invest in physical infrastructure and social infrastructure, put the right policies in place that inspire and motivate the private sector to just grow. I think if that is done, the private sector does not need much support from. Just ensure that the government does not introduce any growth retarding policies or policies that make their cost of operations go higher. I think government needs to ensure that they provide infrastructure, whether it's physical or social, and then the right policies, and provide security and privacy and the enabling policies and strategies. And if that is done efficiently, I think the private sector would just kick in. And in many of these sectors, particularly the ones I highlighted.
All right, well, arguably, the Nigerian government investments in the economy have been low and misplaced in some instances. That's according to several postulations anyway, such as the neglect of the manufacturing industry, which some have said that has resulted in a weak multi-sectoral expansionary growth. Now, how do we now expect productivity to be boosted by 50% according to what your reports are presented?
Like I said, it's the manufacturing sector, just like other parts of the economy, do not require, it does require the right policies that encourage productivity. Like I said, the ingredients, as far as Nigeria is concerned, is there. We have the population. All we have to do is ensure that we have a better educated population. I'm not talking about schooling. I'm talking about education, more in line with what is required for production in the current modern era. Provide the infrastructure, power roads, to ensure that distribution networks are optimal. And then ensure that policies are there to drive expansion and to drive consumer demand and to drive exports, make all this easier, seamless. And once that is done, you see your productivity going up, similar to what has happened in many other countries, particularly in Asia. That's what they did, and that's how it worked. And I think we replicate the same thing. What we have in Nigeria most of the time is some of the policies, the plans, the projects, and programs of government actually act to restrain creativity, to restrain private sector growth. And all you have to do is just remove those chains. And once that is done, you see productivity start to grow in all the sectors, including manufacturing.
All right, so according to the report also, we see that the CEOs are expecting digital transformation strategies to improve by 40%. So does this now suggest that probably publicly and privately run businesses will become tech compliant in the nearest future? Are you seeing signs that they're embracing technology at the speed that they need to drive this conversation around digital transformation and growth?
Definitely seen signs. As part of the survival of any business, it is to anticipate the changing needs and demands of a very rapidly evolving domestic and global market. So I don't even think it's a case of whether or not they would choose to embrace technology. That's the way and be tech compliant. I think that's the way global and domestic supply chains and market growth, that's the direction that it's taking. So it's not even a case of would they, should they. I think that for them to survive, they had no choice but to embrace technology and be more tech compliant. And that's exactly what a lot of them are doing. And otherwise, they're going to face huge competition domestically, globally, if they do not do that. So I think it's not even a choice. They don't really have a choice whether or not you do that. I think it's something that they have been forced to do, and that's what is probably driving that. What is clearly observed as an increase in technology and being tech compliant. It's all about doing what they need to do to survive as the global economy keeps evolving.
All right, there have also been conversations around seeming regional growth because, of course, when we see Nigeria taking these giant strides in these areas, it will be needful for other countries within the spectrum of the region to also take that cue or take the initiative. So when you look at other African countries within the same region that Nigeria occupies, do you think that they are also coming up to speed with the terms of economic growth that Nigeria is actually projected to achieve in the next couple of years?
I think the results are mixed. In the particular region Nigeria operates, that's the West African region. Nigeria is about 50% of that economy. I think after that is Ghana. Nigeria is having challenges currently. It's growing slowly. So it's Ghana. Ghana just negotiated, as you are aware, we just negotiated with the IMF and it just collected the first 300 million. So West African countries' growth is generally struggling. I think as far as Africa is concerned, most of the stronger growth is coming from East Africa. Even in South Africa as well, we're having issues with power outages in South Africa, which is also holding down proper growth in the southern region. So I think East African countries, driven by Kenya, are doing better in terms of growth. But most the countries in North Africa, Egypt is also trying to recover from some challenges. And West African countries in general are having challenges, although the challenges differ. The bigger countries like Nigeria, like Ghana, are having challenges, but the smaller ones are growing a bit better. Many of the smaller countries also depend on the growth of countries like Nigeria, that's half of that region. So if Nigeria is not doing very well, they tend to be affected as well. So the region is still struggling. There are still huge challenges in the region, but I think the worst, in my opinion, is over, and I think it's Nigeria and all the other countries in the region. I think the forecast going forward is positive.
So when we consider the struggles that Africa generally is going through, you mentioned that East Africa is championing the cause and stepping out of the ashes, as it were. So what is the thing, or what are the things that you would say East African countries, championed by Kenya, of course, are actually doing differently compared to West Africa? Would you say that there are peculiarities, and because of these diversities, it might be hard for West Africa to get out of its economic struggles, even as we see some positivity coming out from the East?
I think it has to do more with first of all, the structure of the economy. It's a lot more diversified. It has to do with the market, that their market, the structure of the economy, their market is completely different. I think their economy is also more integrated, and additionally, and all these things make them less vulnerable to a lot of shocks. And I also think that their governments have been been more proactive about taking the right decisions and introducing the right policies on time. So I think that's probably what sets them apart from other parts of the African region.
All right, thank you so much. I'm Yemi Kale, partner and chief economist, KPMG Nigeria. Nice to have you have joined us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so according to a report, the focus of Nigerian CEOs is on growth at this present time, and they believe that there is need for strategic partnerships for the creation of an ecosystem that can help the companies become more formidable for accelerated growth and against unprecedented shocks, not only for them, but of course for Nigeria, as it were. It will bring about an overall rippling effect for the Nigerian economy, most especially if these companies can channel their strength and resources to mitigating the effect or whatever shocks that might come in the course of the years. But then we're going to pen the conversation right there, go for a short break, and bring you international business stories. To stay with us.